Hello, and welcome to Just Say No, the show where we spotlight cannabis innovators, game changing products, and the visionaries driving the legal cannabis movement. I'm your host, Maria Calabrese, broadcasting on KCAA Radio, 1050 AM, 106.5 FM, the station that leaves no listener behind. Today, I would like to close out Black History Month by discussing a topic that is both as urgent as it is long overdue: social equity in the cannabis industry. As we celebrate Black History Month, we are called to confront some difficult truths. While the cannabis industry is thriving, the communities that have suffered the most from prohibition continue to be largely excluded from its opportunities. The war on drugs disproportionately targeted Black and Brown communities, tearing apart families and filling prisons with nonviolent offenders. Now, as legalization sweeps the country, those same communities are being left behind. This isn't just a cannabis issue. It's a civil rights issue, an economic justice issue, and a test of our commitment to fairness. Why should we care? Well, let's have a listen to some folks who are anxious to let us know.
It sounds like there's privilege or racism involved in the marijuana industry.
I'm still waiting on my 40 acres and a mule right now, and I'm gonna put dubs on my mule.
People who've been harmed by the war on drugs in particular, that they want essentially those 40 acres and that mule as well in this new budding industry.
What you really need to do is go back in the 30s, the African Americans, they were basically users, and they basically responded the worst of all those drugs just because their character, makeup, their genetics.
They're bringing drugs, they're bringing crime, they're rapists.
There's still a lot of people incarcerated. There's still a lot of people that need help.
My company, as we're going public, we set aside $20 million to social equity movement.
Supernova Women is an organization that sets forth to help women of color become stakeholders in the cannabis space.
It's important for us, again, to be a part of the dialogue, but it's also incumbent upon us to be social equity. We have to also be a part of the change. Some people get really scared when they see my crew come into the kitchen.
The injustice doesn't just harm fledgling Black entrepreneurs, it weakens the industry as a whole. A cannabis market without equity is one that repeats the sins of the past, where profit is prioritized over people and power is concentrated in the hands of the few. A truly inclusive industry benefits everyone, me, you, consumers, businesses, and our society as a whole. Today we're going to hear from a few of the trailblazers I've had the pleasure of meeting over the years, including social equity operators, scientists, and attorneys who work with LA city and county governments, each doing their part to try to break down barriers in the legalized cannabis market. We'll explore the history of prohibition, the failures of current equity programs, and what must be done to right these wrongs, not just in theory, but in practice. So whether you're a cannabis connoisseur, you think Kush is just a fancy pillow, this conversation affects you. By the end of the show, I promise you're going to walk away with a deeper understanding of how equity in cannabis connects to justice in America and what you can do to be part of the solution. So stay tuned, because we're about to challenge outdated narratives, uplift powerful voices, and push for the change the industry, this country, and you desperately deserve. Come on, let's get smarter with some of the brightest minds in the industry.
By 2020, Bank of America and Merrill Lynch estimate that will grow to $35 billion. And many experts believe it could eventually reach $200 billion each and every year.
laugh, and what you give is worth it. When you're holding me, when you hold me so close, I want further in under your skin. Wanna leave a mark so that I can be sure that you remember what's been. I used to be satisfied.
Welcome back. Before we dive into today's conversation, it's important to understand why social equity in cannabis isn't just a buzzword, why it's a necessity. Legalization in and of itself, it does not guarantee diversity, access, or inclusion into the industry. Without intentional policies, the same communities that have been harmed the most by prohibition will continue to be left behind. To truly grasp the inequities surrounding cannabis today, we have to look back at how prohibition was built on a foundation of racism and fear-mongering. So I want to throw to a GBL TV quick hit. For more quick hits, you can tune into greenbeelife.com. Let's see what we've got here. Look up Harry Anslinger, 1937 Marijuana Tax Act, and really understand what the rationale was behind the prohibition. Really understand that prior to the 1937 Marijuana Tax Act, marijuana was used. It dates back to the Bible. It was used as an anti-inflammatory for pain relief, for the pain associated with childbirth. So understand the history, and then you have to read, if you'd only read one thing about it, Jack Herer's The Emperor Wears No Clothes. Many people will tell you that that's what changed their views.
The misinformation campaign was started in the 1930s.
America's public enemy number one is drug abuse.
Just say no.
An unwinnable war, fueled by lies, fought against the counterculture, and married to racism. But the times, they are changing.
Recreational marijuana now legal in New York.
I think this plant is finally going to get its day. I think this plan is finally going to get its day, and hopefully the people who brought it to America will. So, cannabis wasn't always criminalized. In the 1800s, it was widely used for medicinal and industrial purposes. But in the early 1900s, a shift occurred, one driven by xenophobia and racial propaganda. Mexican immigrants fleeing political and economic turmoil brought the cultural practice of smoking marijuana to the United States. Instead of embracing this new use and plant and crop, politicians and media figures, most notably Harry Anslinger, seized the moment to demonize both the plant and the people associated with it. Anslinger, the architect of the 1937 Marijuana Tax Act, pushed the unfounded idea that cannabis led to violence and insanity, especially among Black and Latino communities. He tied cannabis use to jazz culture, claiming it made Black musicians forget their place and fueled moral corruption. By using the Spanish term marijuana instead of cannabis, he ensured that the drug and the fear surrounding it was associated with Mexican immigrants. The result, a wave of discriminatory policies and disproportionate enforcement. By 1938, just 1 year after the Marijuana Tax Act was passed, just 1 year, Black Americans were already three times more likely to be arrested for narcotic drug violations than their white counterparts, and Mexican Americans nearly 9 times more likely. 9 times more likely. Fast forward to the 1970s, and President Nixon, he doubled down on this racially charged war. The Controlled Substances Act of 1970 classified cannabis as a Schedule I drug, alongside heroin, effectively criminalizing millions more. Nixon's own advisors later admitted that the war on drugs was a political weapon used to target Black communities and anti-war activists, making it a felony. If you become a felon, you can't vote. So the 1980s brought Reagan's war on drugs, which escalated mass incarceration, further devastating communities of color. Harsh sentencing laws and mandatory minimums ensued that Black and Latino individuals faced disproportionately severe penalties for nonviolent drug offenses. Even today, despite similar usage rates across racial groups, Black individuals are still nearly four times more likely to be arrested for cannabis possession than white individuals. Now, as legalization sweeps across the country, a multi-billion-dollar industry is emerging. But who is profiting? And who is still paying the price? Well, to help us unpack these questions, I was honored to catch up with Yvette McDowell at a National Cannabis Industry Trade Association summit held in West Hollywood just a few months ago. Yvette is a seasoned attorney, a class act, a consultant, and a fierce advocate for social equity in cannabis. She has a background in law enforcement and public service and now works to try to ensure fair access and justice for those harmed most by the war on drugs. Through her firm, Yvette McDowell Consulting, she helps shape policy and empower communities to thrive in this emerging legal cannabis space, consulting LA city and county governments. So I wanted to share a little bit of my conversation with her. Here we go.
Most people are familiar with the war on drugs. That's how social equity came about. What statistics have shown and data that's collected by the Department of Justice shows that there was a disproportionate number or communities of arrest for cannabis possession or cannabis use that impacted African American and Latinos more than anyone else, even though the rate of use amongst whites was about the same. But when you look at the arrest statistics, an entirely different thing. What those arrests did, it really made it difficult for people to be able to take advantage of things. For example, housing, benefits. You have an arrest record, it's going to go against you. It's
You
a
can't
strike.
even vote
You
if it's a
cannot-
felony.
That's right, you can't vote. I mean, housing, Social Security benefits, there's so many things that you are now disproportionately impacted on. And as a result of that, there was legislation passed by Senator Stephen Bradford out of Gardena, I believe that's where he's from, and he introduced what's called the Social Equity Bill. What that does, it allows for the state to infuse certain amounts of money to help those who were convicted of cannabis convictions to remove some of the barriers to entry, to enter the cannabis industry. And the barriers are high, very difficult to get in this space. But if you have been convicted, many times that would have held you back. So giving somebody a foot up to enter an industry that is a multi-billion-dollar industry to take part in that, why wouldn't you give people that even help build the industry? Give them an opportunity to come in, to be able to build some legacy and hopefully pass it down to their family. So that was the introduction of social equity. And that's how it came about.
Intention.
Yes.
The theory. But
The
now
theory.
In reality.
In reality.
What happened? What happened?
There are lots of problems with social equity. You know, when we talk about giving monies to set people up and shop, many social equity applicants don't have the business acumen coming in. And as such, you said you were going to provide tools, state. So where are the tools? You said you were going to give monies in order to help. Where is the money going? Where has it gone? And I'll give you an example of that. For example, social equity was given $15 million by the state. And when I look at what enforcement dollars went out, it was somewhere around $160 million. Youth programming. I'm all for youth. I worked in youth programs. They were giving youth programs $60 to $80 million. I said, but you give a revenue generating industry, social equity operators, 15 million? I said, what is enforcement doing to generate revenue? What are the youth programs doing to generate revenue? Social equity is generating revenue.
It's backwards.
It's backwards.
And
Exactly.
what's really maddening is those enforcement dollars, I don't think they're enforcing. I mean,
that's what I hear. They're not enforcing.
There's at least four, I see illicit dispensaries to every one legal one walking down
They're
in a
everywhere.
everywhere. Where are the enforcement dollars going?
I don't know, but I know they're not going to social equity. That's for sure. Why do we still have so many illicit shops? And a lot of them advertise. You go by, see the green crosses.
Weed maps even, on weed maps
Yes,
even.
they advertise, so I don't understand why enforcement is not happening when they're making themselves so readily available for you, law enforcement.
And the consequences on this, guys, is it's not profitable. It doesn't lift up communities. It doesn't, it has a counter effect.
Yeah.
So something that was supposed to be good,
It's failing.
it's failing.
Yeah, the state, in my opinion, has failed social equity.
Now that's in California. Are there any states that got it right?
I can't think of any offhand.
I know. I can't either.
I can't think of any. They
Can't
say
either.
California leads the way.
I don't know.
But if California's leading the way, then I'm sorry, everyone's gonna fail.
Sheep off a cliff. So we got to wake up, people, because,
Yes.
you know, how bad does it have to get? I mean, but that was one of the topics of today's discussion that you moderated with a very, very lively panel. And one of the many perks of being a member of the NCIA is these subject matter experts. It's a place
Yes.
for these great minds to come together and talk about conversations. Cannabis's prohibition, its origins were based in racism going back to the 1937 Marijuana Tax Act.
Yes.
And then you go through the 70s with Nixon, and then the failed war on drugs, which a lot of people don't understand, but you've got to get this, guys. It was a war on human rights and on science.
Yes.
And this is a medicine plant that can help a lot of people, and it can help the economy. But what were some of the other takeaways from the lively panel you moderated today?
You know, one of the biggest things, I think the regulators are really faced with a difficult problem because they are at the whim of the city councils, the board of supervisors to do what needs to be done. Money. They need money to run these programs. And they're not getting the money that they need. And as I share with my clients, you have to have money to put these programs together. Because if you don't have the money to put the right technical assistance in place, you're going to be setting people up for failure for sure. People coming in who really don't have a grasp in the business acumen of what to do, how are they supposed to get this stuff if you're not going to provide technical assistance to really help them? And you say you want to help remove barriers? Come on, then help remove them and give money to the programs that need it.
Exactly. And this is where everyone out there comes in. We've got to start with, you've got to understand the origins of the prohibition.
Yes.
You've got to understand the inequity and the failed war on drugs.
Yes.
You've got to understand what's at stake here.
That's right. That's right. You have to understand it, and that requires education.
It requires education, and the reason you need to understand it is because we need your voice.
Yes.
And
yes.
you spoke about that. Can you speak a little bit about that? Because
I've been involved with NCIA for a lot of years, and I had the privilege to go to the Capitol and lobby for 4 years. And I'll tell you, when you walk into those offices of some of the legislators and you talk with their staff, because most times you're meeting with staff. You're not meeting with senators or from members from the House.
But if their constituents
If they're
were rattling their cages.
Exactly. That's why I say all politics is local. And you have to start on the local level. Get to know your political pundits, I'll call them, for lack of better words. Get to know who they are. Get to know what their concerns are, what interests them. And you really start having the conversation on cannabis on a local level, because they don't just elevate to the state or to the federal government just by a ballot. They don't do that. You have to get to know them first here and then follow them as they elevate. And as you do that, you provided education to them so they now can take a look at the taxes. How much in taxes are being collected? Where are those taxes going?
And then you say there's no money for the social equity or the like where, but I heard in California, right? There's a potential in July it'll be a 40% tax.
That's what I was told. I'm not an operator, but from operators that I do talk to and deal with, they are hurting. And businesses are shutting down every day.
Businesses who are trying to do it legally.
Yes.
They're not surviving legalization.
That's right.
And that leaves the consumer vulnerable to the very dangers that these tax dollars are supposed to be going to agencies to protect us from.
Right.
And it's not marijuana. It's bad marijuana.
That's right.
It's unregulated marijuana.
It just keeps the illicit market thriving, is what it does. And
makes no sense.
From where I sit, if you are really, really that concerned about eradicating the illicit market, then create a pathway for people to come from the illicit market to enter into the legal space, but you've got to lower these taxes. I think this is probably the most highly regulated industry around. The taxes are crazy.
And
crazy.
Not only lower them, but proportion them toward things that make an investment in the community, in the people, in the future businesses, local politics. But what kills me about, doesn't kill me, what fills my energy buckets about cannabis is it gets us talking about what you're saying, all politics is local politics. Cannabis is sparking a conversation that it really goes to everything, not just the issue of cannabis.
Yes.
And look what's going on in the country. It's not just being on your TikTok, no offense, but it's not just going and complaining.
Yes.
Or you've got to get involved. You've got to establish the relationship. You've got to make the relationship on the local level.
Yes.
Hold the politicians accountable.
Yes. No one likes being held accountable, unfortunately, but it's the nature of the beast, and I believe this is where organizations like NCIA comes in to be able to lobby, to hold people accountable for the tax dollars that they're spending. Where are they going? It gives us that chance to really educate people, and not just from the political spectrum, but even community-wise.
Because if you don't know what the issues are, and you don't know how they impact you,
yes,
how are you going to vote?
Exactly. You have to stay engaged. You have to stay informed. And I know as a member for me of NCIA, it allows me to educate. And once you're educated, you have a much better understanding of what you are talking about and what you're voting for.
Exactly.
Yes, you're doing it informed.
That's right, and especially for business operators. I mean, it was interesting. One of my the key takeaways, I had a chuckle today when they were saying when, people are coming in for the green rush who are motivated by the money. they're out of this business in 6 to 8 months. It's like, see ya. They're like, this is not a green rush. It's a revolution. It's a green revolution. And I find everybody I meet more and more, they're called to it they understand the impact it can have medically and just on improving their lives.
Well, if you think about it, the indigenous population used cannabis medicinally for, centuries. Centuries.
Wouldn't it be great if Congress got in a big circle past the peace pipe?
I would love to be a part of that table to see that happen.
I would invest in the strain that calms certain one of them.
Yes.
Kind of balances. I'm not going to name names, but
that would be amazing to see those who have been so anti-cannabis but don't know anything about cannabis.
That's the thing. They're misinformed.
Yes.
Guys, it's been in the shadows for 8 decades. 1937 Marijuana Tax Act. People were doing it. There'd be a little plant in the closet with the light that your mother would say, don't go near there. But she'd go in there when you were sick as a kid and you're like, what's in there? This has been in the shadows. The only information we have is misinformation. It isn't everything old is new again. Doesn't it sound a lot like what's happening now?
Yes.
You can't be basing your decisions off of, well, you can, but it's not going to benefit anyone to come up basing your opinions based on propaganda and misinformation.
That's
and
right.
The war on drugs is Just Say No, N-O, but my radio show is Just Say No with a K-N-O-W. Hold on. Say no. K-N-O-W. You have to know before you jump to N-O.
That's right.
Or Y-E-S.
That's right.
And we're not telling you to go in either direction, and your value system's your value system. But do it based on information.
Informed cannabis use. Whether you consume or not, that's on you. But
And how.
And
whether
how.
it's responsibly.
Exactly.
Same with alcohol.
Exactly. The same thing.
With food.
Anything.
Anything.
Responsible use. We don't want our kids out consuming.
No.
We do not want that. We know that. But how do we educate our kids if we ourselves are not educated?
That's right. And you're not even able to have an open conversation with them.
Exactly. Our kids know
You got to
so
be able to
much
meet
more.
them where they are.
That's
Exactly.
right.
And talk to them about it. And with descheduling, we can remove barriers to research to really find out what is the impact on brains under 21 years old. But we know what the impact of cigarettes are.
That's right. That's right. It's quite interesting to me, and I believe it's Ole Miss that has been doing a study. The government has been paying them for like 30 years to grow cannabis and study cannabis. I have yet to see one report come from Ole Miss about cannabis and its impact. I keep asking that question. Where are the reports?
Wow.
You have federal government, you've paid Ole Miss millions of dollars to grow and study?
Now, this might be a conspiracy theory. I have not fact-checked this. But some people speculate it's because they did that to come up with evidence of negative effects. And they didn't find any, so they're not releasing anything.
I'm not
now,
surprised.
isn't that would be so wasteful to study something to try to find what's wrong with it.
Yeah.
I mean, come on, let's put opioids under that level of scrutiny.
Yes.
Yes. But I could talk to you all day long. So, about the National Cannabis Industry Association, how long have you been a member?
Oh, my goodness. Has it been 10 years?
Okay, so a lot's changed since then.
A lot has changed. A lot.
And I mean, let's just fantasize and then we could be realistic. But where do you hope to see the impact that the National Cannabis Industry Association can make over the next decade?
I would say descheduling
Oh, that would be great.
That is one of the first things that needs to happen. Safe banking needs to be a priority. 280E needs to be, complete overhaul in these things. If we can do those three things, deschedule, safe banking in place, because right now it is still a cash carry business for the most part. People are still being robbed. People are being murdered.
Which just reinforces the stigma and the negative stereotypes.
Yes, it continues
just
to do
reinforces
that.
it. I mean, I was raised a child of dare. I was horrified. I came to it medically, but honestly, it was hard to walk up to a dispensary. It's intimidating with an armed guard. It really.
That's what they have to have, though.
Until we
definitely
have
to
safe
it.
banking.
Exactly.
Sure.
Safe banking. And why should cannabis businesses not be allowed to write off?
That's 280E
taxes?
that she's talking about. The cannabis
Why?
businesses and operators, flower touching, cannot write off their business expenses. And then with the tax structure, and where is all this money going? They might be in California at a 40% tax come July, possibly. Their margins are small.
Yes.
And then on top of it, they can't write it off. So it's almost like they're trying to squash the industry, because how do you survive legalization doing it safely, responsibly?
You cannot.
And then,
You
as a social
cannot.
equity person,
You just
someone
can't.
who gets a license, they're giving you like Happy Meal money.
Yeah.
I mean,
That's what it's tantamount
here,
to.
you get a dispensary, and here's money that'll get you a Happy Meal. Go set it up and run it.
And let's see how long it lasts.
Yeah. Which is such an exciting new frontier where you could create jobs
Yes.
and well, this is why we want to get the word out. We want to talk to the mainstream media. We want to talk to the concerned parents. I want to talk to you. I want to talk to everybody. I don't blame you. You don't want it so many feet from your church or your kid's school, but why? And let's have a conversation about that. Let's really understand it, and let's figure out sensible rules and regulations
Yes.
that will benefit everyone and lift everyone and communities up, especially the communities that were, on the war on drugs, the communities that were destroyed.
Yes. And destroyed is absolutely correct.
And let's. Cannabis industry was supposed to be a fresh start, an opportunity to repair the harm caused by the war on drugs, especially in communities of color. Social equity programs were designed to level the playing field, giving Black and brown entrepreneurs a fair shot at success in this booming or blooming market. But as we take a closer look, it's clear that many of these efforts have fallen short. And there's smart people out there like Yvette trying to figure it out. But let's start with Los Angeles. After speaking with her, I realized and learned so many things. The city has taken steps to prioritize social equity applicants, ensuring that new cannabis retail and delivery licenses go to those most affected by past drug policies, at least until this past January 2025. They broadened the definition of impacted communities and expanded opportunities for equity ownership. But as we've seen, these policies, we have to ask, are they working? And we know the answer, they're not. They're not. In 2022, Los Angeles Times investigation found that equity applicants made up less than 8% of all of the cannabis license holders statewide, far from the sweeping change many had hoped for. And in some cases, regulations, they've been revised and manipulated in ways that are benefiting political insiders rather than the communities these programs were meant to serve. And compared to other cities, LA's approach has its own unique challenges. It doesn't have a top-down approach. All the different it's a patchwork of inconsistent policies. For example, Long Beach requires licensed cannabis businesses to ensure 40% of work hours go to equity employees, while the state of California offers grants, fee relief, and other resources to support equity at multiple levels. However, the major roadblock in LA is the sheer number of illegal dispensaries. An estimated 3,000 unlicensed cannabis businesses compared to just 373 legal dispensaries. 373. And how many of those 373 are social equity license holders? You know, this creates an unfair marketplace where licensed and social equity businesses will license general license businesses and licensed social equity businesses struggle to compete against the illicit market that doesn't have to follow the same rules or pay taxes. So what's the solution? How do we fix a system that, despite good intentions, it's still failing Black and brown entrepreneurs? That's exactly what our next panel discussion is about. Shortly after cannabis legalization in California, UCLA's Canna Club, UCLA was one of the first colleges to institute a Canna Club. It's a fantastic organization, and I encourage everybody to look into it and support it. They were the first, and now many Canna Clubs are popping up at colleges all over the country. UCLA's Canna Club hosted a powerful, powerful conversation on being Black in cannabis. It was moderated by Danielle Van Leerburg from CannaSafe, and it had an incredible panel of Black entrepreneurs and advocates who shared their personal journeys navigating an industry that several years later is still plagued by the same deep-rooted disparities. The panel included Whitney Beatty. Whitney, the visionary behind Josephine and Billy's, one of LA's first Black women-owned dispensaries, inspired by historic tea pads where Black communities used to gather to consume cannabis safely. So if you haven't been to Josephine and Billy's, you have to go. It's in Los Angeles, Josephine and Billy's, and be sure to say hello to Whitney. Also, Bryant Mitchell participated. He's the founder of Black Star Farms. It's a cannabis company dedicated to quality, sustainability, and creating economic opportunities for communities of color. Rico Labonte, formerly Rico Tarver, he joined, and he's a former football player turned media entrepreneur and advocate, using his platforms to challenge stigma and push for an inclusive industry. And none other than the wonderful Andrea Drummer, a celebrated cannabis chef and founder of Elevation VIP. She's broken barriers in both the culinary and cannabis worlds. Each of them has firsthand experience with the barriers that I was discussing with Yvette McDowell about. And these barriers, they still exist today, whether it's access to funding, navigating regulations, or competing against the illegal market. So let's dive into their conversation and hear what still needs to change and how we might be able to move forward.
I love you.
And what can I do to be social equity minded? What can I be mindful of, like?
That's an awesome question. That's an awesome question.
My answer to that, just be sensitive to people's feelings and needs. We've been through a lot as a culture for hundreds of years. There's lots of pain behind that. And every time there's been an opportunity, we've had the rug swept up from underneath us. So just keep that in mind and be an ally. If you have any doubt or any question, is what I'm saying or what I'm doing insensitive, ask. That's it. There's no rocket science to it. Just ask, right? Don't assume that somebody, oh yeah, it's not a big deal, I would deal with it differently. Just ask, bro. Like, there's nothing wrong with being white at all. I promise. I promise. But I would say just 90% of the issues that we deal with on the social end of the circuit are avoidable just by asking. Is what I'm doing affecting you negatively? Is it okay for me to do this? Is it okay for me to say this? I let my white friends know that, and it's okay. It doesn't have to be an abrasive situation. Just ask questions. It's all good.
So Supernova has been kind of working right now to kind of come up with what we would like to see companies in general put into place in regards to diversity issues on a larger scale. So, if you, 3 years from now have a cannabis-facing business, what we would hope for you to be doing is to make sure that you're looking at diversity, not just on the bud tender level, but in your C-suite. That you have those diverse voices that are across, organizational, so in your marketing that you're thinking about, diversity. Also, really in your buying, making sure that you're stocking not just, things that are coming from large white-owned companies, but you got Black Star on the shelf, or you got Andrew's Edibles on the shelf. Being able to include those companies that are being fronted by people of color, so there is some more equity in there. I think one of the things that kind of frustrates people of color becomes the idea that Jerome's in jail for selling cannabis and Chad just opened a dispensary on his corner. This idea that, we're not participating and people are still in jail. So if you make sure that on different levels, especially on those power levels, that you've got participation across the board, that's how you become a good ally. And there are good allies in this space. They are out there and they definitely exist. So as long as you keep your eyes open for that, you'll be in a good position.
And I would just, piggybacking on that, I would just say be proactive. That question was a great question. So be proactive. Don't wait on the city and the state to give you rules and regulations on how to, implement social equity, right? You know what your community sees. You know what your community reflects. Try to reflect that too. Be cognizant of the people around you and empathetic. And I think, that question was a great start.
Exactly. Everything what they said, and please, please, please continue to be as courageous and brave in asking those questions and be as open.
Being a social equity applicant and operator, could you tell us a little about the application process and if the program needs any refining?
Oh. The first question is really easy. The application process is thanks due to me getting raided and, losing my livelihood in 2013. That's the price I paid to be a social equity candidate today. That was the biggest piece of this. It was a happenstance, and thank goodness the city of LA and the people that run the city found it, their responsibility to ensure that a social equity program was created, due to the war on drugs and everything else. The second part of that, what was that again now?
Does the program need refining?
Ooh, yeah, I just was like, are you sure you want to ask me that? I'm not recorded on TV. So the social equity program, Virgil Grant and the people that were instrumental in putting the social equity program in play had every great intention in mind. The reality of it is realizing those intentions is totally different than creating them and in creating the program. I think what the social equity program has done was you've given someone an opportunity to make it through an application process, but then when they make it through the application process, they don't have the knowledge, they don't have the funding, they don't have the resources necessary to get something done. And that is to me today the issue with the social equity program. To give you an idea of my background, I'm a social equity candidate. You're talking to a man that, I graduated from undergrad, went and worked for one of the best consulting companies in the world, did consulting for over 5 years, then went to the top 5 MBA. After getting my MBA, I came out and did mergers and acquisitions and strategy consulting. I sat with CEOs and helped them understand what they needed to do. I can barely do this shit. So, excuse my French, but this is the situation we put social equity candidates in without giving them any collaboration, any guidance, and I hope that we can remedy the situation based on where we're at. But, it's a daunting task, and I think it's an uphill battle. That's why Black Star is here. We're hoping to help people kind of, cross this bridge a little bit better as we're trying to cross it ourselves. But, I thank goodness for social equity, but, I'm interested to see where it's at in 2 years. And hopefully we can help progress that.
Yeah, let's let the other panelists speak about how they feel like social equity has impacted the city of LA. Rico, looks like you're interested in this topic?
No, yeah, absolutely. I actually helped my company as we were going public. We set aside $20 million to social equity movements. The two biggest issues that I see, number one, there's no affirmative action here. So like Brian was saying, like 60 years of plight, for black and brown operators, black and brown families. We have at least 3 generations of black, brown men and women that have been incarcerated and killed. And you literally cannot say this law is to help black and brown people. Great idea, poor execution. Second thing is California decided to act when legalization got passed as its own country. So you have different rules in every damn city. There's no top-down program. So Oakland is very different than LA. LA is very different than San Fran. San Fran is different than Sacramento. You got different people with different needs, and it just doesn't look good at all. And it's tough. So it's really, it's an issue that's near and dear to my heart, but just being realistic about it, I've got a lot of doubts about the program. And my solution, in my head, in my heart, is you gotta push the big companies like I did, push my company to work with the people. You gotta push the corporations to do it because they have the money. This is a capitalist society. That's what it comes back down to. Like Brian said, there's not a lot of incentive in California for these big companies to incubate these folks. There's not a lot of incentive for these big corporations to come and help Whitney, to help Andrea. Like, hopefully we fall into those situations. Sometimes we do, sometimes we get lucky, sometimes we work hard and get discovered. But until there's that incentive for those corporations to do that, like, how many times has the government actually come through and followed through with the promises that they've given us?
I'm still waiting for my 40 acres.
Exactly. It's a reality situation, and I don't know. Cautiously optimistic about it, but I'm not going to hold my breath.
Yeah, thank you so much for touching on the fragmented nature of the industry. Although we have standards and regulations, there's so much gray area still. And like Rico was saying, you go to a different city and boom, you've entered like a different world. Whitney, I would love to hear what you have to add.
Besides running Apothecary, I'm also a board member for Supernova Women. Supernova Women is an organization that sets forth to help women of color become stakeholders in the cannabis space. And one of the big things that we do is advocacy. And so Supernova has been an advocate for equity, especially up in the Bay from the get. And we have also very much noticed the issues that have come into play since equity has been in place. And so two of the things that we've been talking about are taxes. Right now, we're in a situation where cannabis is heavily taxed. We're talking 35%, 40% taxes. Where's that tax money going?
Enforcement.
Because, don't get me started. So we've got all this tax money that is really not coming back to the community at hand. We believe that those taxes need to be reduced, but even more so, we believe that a lot of that tax money could also be used to be able to fund the black and brown businesses that they're giving people the opportunity to have licenses for, but now cannot afford what it takes to run them. So there's a great opportunity for them to be able to funnel money back, or to at least do business loans to these organizations who cannot, because we can't get a regular business loan. So you're making a ton of profit off the backs of these communities that have been decimated for years. How about you throw some of that money back? On the other side of that becomes the idea of social equity came from the idea that we've got these communities of brown and black people that have been disproportionately disenfranchised. We got people who were thrown in jail. We've got people who were unable to get jobs. We got people who were unable to get education, cut out of being able to do federal student loans, that have really torn communities apart. And what we're saying is, because of all those things you went through, you can get this lucky shot at maybe getting a license. Well, what if I don't want to own a cannabis business? What then? You still have these communities that had to go through all these things. So the only way that that we give back to these communities is by offering them, a better chance at a license when we failed. We also need to figure out other ways that we can be able to reinvest in these communities that have gone through this. And that can be done through through our equity program, where we're giving job training, when we're giving opportunities for expungement, when we're working with people to, better community development, housing, whatever that is. We can't say that the only thing that we're going to come back with is a discount license. That just can't be the plan. And so those are the things that also need to be looked at in the equity program, because the issue becomes that, Oakland came up with a program, LA came up with a program. Both of those programs are starting to get cloned. People are just taking them, dropping them in new cities. None of the problems are being fixed, but now they're getting, multiplying everywhere. And so we need to go back to the base. That's what things Supernova is doing right now, is going back. Let's look at this program, Oakland. This stuff is not working. Let's fix it before these problems become prevalent across the country. Because everyone's pointing at, what they've done, and yet we're not taking the time to fix all the issues that we started.
Thank you. That's really great insight. Oh my gosh. Andrea, did you have something to add to this?
It's important for us, again, to be a part of the dialogue, be a part of the conversation, be a part of advocacy, but it's also incumbent upon us to be social equity in our hiring practices, in our advocacy, in how we operate, in our sourcing of product. So we have to also be a part of the change. And for me, that's important, not only in my partnering, but also in my practice. Some people get really scared when they see my crew come into the kitchen. My intention is to be social equity. Like, I want to set my intention to be able to say, okay, here's what we're gonna do, and not wait, not hold my breath for someone, because that's going to evolve. All of that is going to change because we are here, right? Because we are, that's going to change. Because we're a part of the conversation, that's going to change. Because we are advocating, that's going to change. Because of Supernova Women, that's going to, so, but until then, what are we doing? And we have to set our intention and be diligent in that.
Do we have any student questions?
That's pretty powerful stuff. Oh boy, we needed definitely more than an hour today. And unfortunately, we're coming up to the close of the show. But I want to leave you with one last powerful excerpt from Dr. Brandy Cross. Dr. Cross is a scientist, researcher, and advocate whose work explores cannabis through the lens of health, history, and equity. Her words it just drives it all home. It serves as a crucial reminder that cannabis legalization alone is not enough to undo the racist legacy of prohibition. So let's listen as she really brings the critical point home.
Club, we are very aware of the social equity program. Why is it so important?
So I'm going to try to kind of tie into the narrative since we're talking about our various communities. So I'm Afro-Indigenous, in case you couldn't tell, usually can't. That means I'm Black and I'm North American Indian. I'm of Choctaw Nation, although I'm registered as Diné or Navajo. In our communities, we are up against a lot of things because cannabis means jail time. Cannabis means the cops will kill you. Cannabis means a lot more severe penalties. And this goes into Latino communities as well, because anyone knows those are indigenous people as well. And it's not Latinos that necessarily pass as white that are being murdered by the police, let's just say. So you're up against a lot of things, even if people believe and grandma keeps a secret plant in the closet that you don't know about, or that bottle of something that she gives you when you're really sick. And the same with Black grandmas too, they do it too. They hide it because all they know is you could go to jail. And even if they believe in the medicinal powers, it's like, well, it might heal you, but you might die. So, it's this life or death gamble, and it has been in our communities for a long time. So as a Black person, I go back to the history of bringing back slavery and bringing seed here, people's teeth were pulled out for saying the word daga, which is in different African dialects means cannabis plant. They actually removed their teeth. So these things fall into this modern history where we have Black, Latino, and Indigenous people kind of being held back by the quote-unquote legalization efforts. So the social equity bills are really important. A lot of the licensing, and I've read all the dialogue, and one thing I had a problem with is you have to give up your Indigenous federal rights for this license. Why would I give up federal Indigenous rights to have a roki-doki license that I'm paying $10,000 and up a year to have, when nobody's making that kind of money that cares about their patients? Nobody's making that kind of money who labels correctly. Nobody's making that kind of money without oppressing someone else. So I have a lot of issues with the way Prop 65 was written because, 64. Prop 215 could have been cleaned up a lot better. Patient advocacy groups were really against it, and a lot of community groups were against it because it took away the right for patients to cultivate for themselves. And it took away their groups, their cooperatives, where people like us would get together and say, oh, hey, we have this garage, and we're gonna grow 20 plants, and we're gonna split them between us. And then we're gonna have this medicine for a year. So there's a lot of problematic things. So the social equity programs are the only way to kind of bring back free cannabis giveaway farms, cooperative farms, and low-cost medicine for people who are truly sick, because being sick costs a lot of money. If everyone wants to have capitalism, which I personally don't, but if we're going to live in capitalism, everything costs money. And so with nowhere to donate to and nowhere to give away cannabis, we're really hurting the patients while we're rewarding recreational users. That's just my opinion. So it's changed a lot. Now I see people getting into this industry like money signs in their eyes, when it used to be people with tears in their eyes saying, this is all that works for me, I will die without this. Like people like me who cried at night with pain without it, people who needed access to this other thing. And I think without stepping up and preserving those boundaries and those limits around at least medical cannabis, we're gonna lose the health benefits forever.
The whole medicinal is at stake. I mean, we will lose the health benefits forever. It's more than just the promise of a high, and there's adult recreational, there's medicinal, but there's so much at stake. And true reform, it must go beyond simply making cannabis legal. It must actively dismantle the systemic inequalities that have long plagued this industry and the communities most impacted by the war on drugs. You can't just make it legal, and you just can't make it easy for these people who are harmed and impacted and don't have the resources to run a business and think you're going to level the playing field by saying, oh, okay, here you can have a license to a dispensary. Running a legal dispensary, well, that's another episode. But there are systemic inequalities, and they're historic. And people who are impacted by the war on drugs, like they said, it's pretty tough when a black person's sitting in prison and a white person is reaping the benefits off their backs on the opportunity that this multi-billion industry offers. So, in closing today, the responsibility to drive meaningful change obviously can't fall on legislation alone. There's a lot corporations can do. Corporations, investors, and established cannabis businesses, they've got to step up and commit to social equity, not just as a talking point, but as an integral part of their business models. Now, I'd love to see government incentives for them to do that, but they've got to step up, whether it's through mentorship, financial assistance, or partnerships that provide real opportunities for growth. The private sector has the power to make a tangible difference where government programs have failed. And it would be nice if the government would take responsibility and incentivize the corporations to do so. So anyway, we've got to close. I want to thank everyone for tuning in today. Your support means everything. And I hope this conversation has inspired you to find meaningful ways to incorporate social equity into your life. Your curiosity and commitment to Just Say No are what drives these important discussions, conversations that have the power to reshape how the world sees green. But it starts from the bottom up. If you know, all politics are local, and that is true now more than ever. So if you've enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe at greenbeelife.com, leave us a review, and share this episode with someone who you think could benefit from it. Until next time, I'm Maria Calabrese. You've been listening to Just Say No on KCA Radio, 1050 AM, 106.5 FM. Also available at greenbeelife.com and wherever you stream your favorite podcasts. Everybody, let's keep pushing forward. It's all we can do. And take care. Just Say No is a Green Bee Life presentation airing live weekly on Friday afternoons from 4 to 5 p.m. Pacific on KCA Radio and KCAA TV. Archived audio episodes are on Green Bee Life, greenbeelife.com, iHeartRadio, Spreaker, and most third-party major platforms. For archived videos, check them out on GBL TV, on Green Bee Life, YouTube, and Rumble. To follow us, our Instagram and Facebook is at Just Say